is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. And in today's video, we are back with some Detroit Lions news. That's right, the NFL trade deadline was today, and the Lions made a move. So let's get it started. Welcome everybody to a video. Glad you guys are here. And yes, we are back with another Detroit Lions latest type of video. I don't know. I'm just excited. Look, here's the thing. Look, we talk all about the trade deadline and all these players that the Lions could potentially add and all the rumors. And then a lot of times, nothing happens. But today, something happened. The Lions made a move, and I'm just excited to talk about it, man. It's just something new to talk about. Now, maybe it wasn't exactly what was expected that the Lions decided to add a receiver to the mix. I'll be honest, late in the process, as we continue to get closer and closer to the deadline, there was a part of me that truly believed the Lions could have been interested in a receiver. I just didn't know who. I couldn't put my finger on who would make sense. So a part of me was like, man, I would look out for a receiver, but at the same time, I just didn't know who that guy would be. But shout out to you guys. I got to give a shout out to you. I think it was a couple streams ago where you were all saying like, hey, keep an eye on Donovan Peoples Jones, and that's exactly who the Lions added. Now, I'm going to start with this, try to keep this short and sweet because I've honestly said a lot of this, like a lot today, but I'm going to start with this. We got to start with what the Lions did not do. The way that I look at it, the Lions, of course, didn't add a defensive lineman, and they did not add a cornerback. We'll start with the defensive line. One thing that I tried not to do, and I think I did a better job of it this year. In the past, I've been really bad at this. You know, you start to just hear new names, so you just like fall in love with every name that's not a player that you have. But trying to focus on, is it a legitimate upgrade? If it's not a legitimate upgrade, you don't want to just make a trade to make a trade, because it's not like the Lions are terrible at the other edge. It's not like the Lions have a liability between Charles Harris and now they're getting Julian more involved in the mix there, and if potentially James Houston can come back, they're going to have a really big time pass rusher to add back to the mix. It wasn't like they have a liability, including Jack Campbell's ability to play at that Sandback role and then Josh Pascal coming back. You wanted to make a legitimate upgrade to me if you were going to do it. And the two guys that could have been legitimate upgrades both got moved today. Montez Sweat and Chase Young. Same team, both got moved. Now I'll start with Sweat. I would not have given up a second-round pick for Sweat, especially considering where that pick would have been for Chicago. We may have had to throw in a little bit more. I wouldn't have made that trade for Sweat. I thought it would have been an upgrade, specifically in consistency, being able to, get production, but I didn't think it was a big-time upgrade. I wouldn't have given up a second-round pick for that. Of course, like keeping draft picks for Brad Holmes. So for me, that's not something I was super interested in once I heard they had given up a second-round pick. For Chicago, they don't have a ton of talent defensively, but they have a ton of cap space, and for them, they have really the top two picks in this next year's draft right now. So for them, they're going to extend him immediately. He's going to be a long-term piece there. For us, we would have had to extend him immediately for giving that up, and I don't know that I loved it in terms of a second-round pick. I was not on board. Someone asked me that question earlier this week, and I said I wouldn't do a second-round pick. Now, Chase Young is the one that I think I could make a legitimate argue for. This is one the Lions could have actually done. Because of where that third-round pick is going to fall for San Francisco, I could see that one a little bit more. Why? Because I think you could argue pretty easily that he was a legitimate upgrade as a pure pass rusher, not as a run defender. And one thing I did say was, the culture fit always comes into play, and I'm sure that it did here as well. We know that he's not under contract. Financially, he was also a little bit easier to take on because he's not getting paid that much right now, but you're probably going to extend him after this season as well, just like Montez Sweat is going to get. Though, maybe there's a world where you don't because he was only a third-round pick. I think it was pretty clear that he was a legitimate upgrade as a pass rusher, though I didn't love him as run defense, and I didn't love the fire. I didn't love the energy that I felt like he brought to the table. He didn't ever make me think of like, yo, look at Aiden Hutchinson playing with his hair on fire, or John Kaminsky. He didn't seem like that when I watched him. He didn't feel like that. Now, he could get it rolling as a pass rusher, and you would start to see some consistent wins, but I didn't feel that when I watched him. But he is a guy that I think you could make a real argument for and say, look, this was the guy, because of what they gave up, we could have made this type of move, especially considering we also have 2 third-round picks, though we don't have a 4th-round pick this upcoming season. But outside of those 2 guys, the edge position, there was a lot of players I think that we talked about that I don't know were legitimate upgrades, whether that be a Carl Lawson who did not get moved today. A lot of those guys, I felt like you would have just been making a trade for the sake of just saying, hey, we made a trade. We got another edge rusher. But it was like, are you legitimately getting an upgrade here? And some of the other guys that I thought that would have been an upgrade, Danielle Hunter, for example, did not get moved. I mean, the Vikings decided not to move him. And then there's also the aspect of he would have been an individual division trade as well. Danico Autry did not get moved. Some of those guys that I thought, okay, but those are upgrades too, they didn't get traded at all. So there's that side of it as well, and I get it. Like, some teams just don't want to give up a good players. We just saw the Vikings go trade for a quarterback, so, they're still trying to compete as well. I can see why they wouldn't want to give up a pass rusher. But The other position that surprised me a little bit, maybe even more, was cornerback, just because I thought they may have wanted to add some depth because they lost Mosley. Like, clearly they had a vision to have Mosley and Jacobs, and as good as it's been with Jacobs and Sutton, just to get at least some competition in terms of depth there. I assume Jacobs is going to get an extension. I think he's earned that. I think he's going to get an extension after the season, but I thought they may want some depth there. Now, of course, they like Will Harris, and he stepped into that role for them. They also have Khalil Dorsey, who I think, I know I've said this multiple times, but in the preseason, I think he played really darn well, and I thought what he showed me in the preseason was like, yo, he could be a backup. I'm just hoping he's healthy. And then, of course, Stephen Gilmore, who was inactive this past week. So that would surprise me a little bit. But again, with the names that actually got moved, like Rasul Douglas, I would have loved Rasul Douglas. But with the names that legitimately got moved, I don't know how many players fell into that category that made sense. You know, we had talked about Sean Murphy-Bunting. He didn't get moved. His cap, it would have been great, but he didn't get moved. He's been their best cornerback by far. Or Kendall Fuller. His contract had been a little bit more tricky to figure out. He's also more of a vet, but he didn't get moved either. And then guys like Kyer Elam, you could have said, well, maybe the Lions should have made a harder push to go get a guy like that. But at the same time, it was like Kyer Elam hasn't put anything that very good on tape. That's more just based on what he can be because of his size, his physicality, and he has an extra year on his contract. And then a guy like Jalen Johnson did not get moved. So for me, I don't think there was any real cornerback movement that I was like, oh, that would have made sense. I like Rasul Douglas a lot. I think that was an excellent trade for the Bills. One more part that I do want to add to this that I think is necessary. I think it can be easy to overlook the future. Who's getting paid? Every team's in a different situation. Are you paying a quarterback? What do you have under contract? Who's about to get paid? You also keep in mind James Houston, when we're talking about that edge position, if he does stick around, he's an exclusive rights free agent after this year because he was UDFA. So even if he comes back or doesn't come back this year, the Lions can basically bring him back on a league minimum next season and keep that pass rusher around. So if they view him as a top-tier pass rusher, I think from what we've seen, he's pretty darn good at it. He can basically come back for nothing and play that Sam role again next season. And then when you have guys like Pascal and Kaminsky in the mix, who's on a multi-year deal now as well, when you have that, it gives you the flexibility to utilize the Sam backer. And to me, he's not the biggest name, but like I said on the Bleacher Report stream, the Lions didn't need to go land a number one receiver on the outside. It's not how their offense is built. Every team's built different. Everybody plays a different style. But for the Lions, we know how the Lions play offensively, okay? They have their guys that are going to eat up receptions that we go in every single week and we know they're going to take the bulk of the load because it's going to be St. Brown, it's going to be Sam Laporta, now it's going to be Jahmyr Gibbs working in the slot, being more impactful in different spots for this offense. Those guys are going to eat up the majority of receptions for the foreseeable future going forward. They're all on rookie deals. They're going to eat up all the touches. St. Brown's going to get paid a ton of money very soon. Then you look on the outside. Now, Jameson Williams has a specific role. I don't think his role is going anywhere. But what the Lions did not have, and this is something that we talked about a little bit after the Baltimore game. After that Ravens game, I think you could step back and say to yourself, if this loss means that the Lions look at it and say, maybe we got to go add this piece, we could look back at that loss and say, man, this was actually not the worst loss because it opened our eyes to we need to add something. And the offense's inability to be consistent in that game. Now, I'm not putting it on the receivers. Trust me, I'm not. I thought it was one of Goff's worst games. I thought he played really well yesterday outside of the pick six, but I didn't think it was great all around the board. The offensive line wasn't great, and we started to get it going a little bit later. But one thing that was clear, coming into that game, Lions were 32nd in pass attempts outside the numbers. That's not how they play offensively. They don't need a guy that's going to live outside the numbers. They don't need to give up a huge draft compensation for a guy that's going to do that. But what they did need was the guy that could play the role that Donovan Peoples Jones can play. He fills a role and a skill set that we don't have. And it's not like edge where you can say, well, maybe if James comes back, we're going to get that elite pass rusher, right? If James might not be a great run defender because of his build, but he could play the Sam backer role for Jack Campbell, kick him to off ball, and we know he's a big-time pass rusher. So that guy could be on the way. But one thing you don't have on the way is a receiver that plays the role like Donovan Peoples Jones, a guy that has glue on his hands, all right? He catches everything thrown his direction and at the same time brings you the play style and physicality and build of something that we don't have coming back. Marvin Jones Jr. walked away from the team, so you lost that player that was kind of that mold. Go back to before the season. Lions traded for Denzel Mims. A conditional trade didn't go through because he didn't make the 53. Big, fast, strong on the outside. Contested catches, could win in his own holes. He didn't make the team, had an injury, missed some time, didn't get to prove himself. But if you think about this, and I think it's funny how this works out, the 6th round pick that the Lions are trading away to go add Donovan Peoples Jones from 2025, not 2024, in the 2025 draft, is the same 6th round pick that was essentially traded for Denzel Mims. The Lions traded a 6th round pick for Denzel, a pick swap, 6th and a 7th. They would have gotten a 7th back, but Denzel Mims did not make the 53. So the trade basically didn't go through. Lions lost nothing. So all they did was come back and say, you know what, that 6th round pick we were going to be willing to give up, we'll just give it to Peoples Jones. Now, here's the big thing that I love about this. There's a couple ways to look at this. One way you can look at it is what we've done in free agency. Prove-it deals. The Lions have signed a lot of prove-it deals over the years, especially the young guys coming off their rookie deal. They sign prove-it deals. But a lot of times when these guys hit free agency and they don't get extended, it's one, because they just haven't put it on the field yet, or number two, a lot of times it's coming off of an injury or it's age. And for the Lions, a lot of times it's guys coming off injuries. Maybe they put good film out there, but they just haven't been consistently healthy. Think of Emmanuel Mosley. That happened this season. But with Donovan Peoples Jones, because it's a trade, this is the type of player that doesn't have that necessarily. In 2021, he had a concussion. He also had a groin injury. Really nothing there that's kept him off the field for a significant amount of time, or something that's continuously reoccurring. Oh, he missed again because of this injury. You're not dealing with that. So it's a prove-it deal, like all the free agents, the way I look at it, like all the free agents that we usually give deals to, Kyle Freeman, Charles Harris, go down the list. We've given a lot of those deals out. So he's like a prove-it deal. Now, the great thing about this is because he hasn't had a lot of production this season, if he plays well into his role, he could absolutely earn an extension. And it wouldn't be super expensive because his production hasn't been there. And it would help the Lions get depth at outside receiver for the future, which they don't really have under contract outside of Jameson Williams and Antoine Green, another rookie. So the Lions could also be getting depth there, and again, a young piece that's still on his rookie deal, very young player, former late round pick out of Michigan, so he's staying in town, which is great. He's only going from Cleveland to Detroit. That's awesome. But now you could also have that piece long term as well. Donovan Peoples Jones, and I'm going to continue to watch more. I'll probably end up doing a breakdown on this player because we have a bye week and because we got that kind of time. But a 6'2", 200+ pound receiver is what we did not have on this team. It's why I think the Lions added Denzel Mims. They wanted to get a player like that. It's why losing Marvin Jones Jr. was like, hold up, we don't have that piece anymore. It's the one offensive piece. We have the deep threat, Khalif. We have Jamo. We have the guys that are going to eat up the receptions, live over the middle of the field for a second level, Laporta, Gibbs, St. Brown. But what we didn't have is this, and he wasn't coming back. We have Josh Reynolds, who's our real pure outside receiver that can win one-on-one, but we didn't have a big physical, big slot like this. And the Lions just added that with the 6th round pick. And here's the key. I don't get caught up in the production here, because with this offense, if they haven't made it clear already, this offense isn't built around the outside receivers getting 5 receptions a game. Some games they may have 4. Other games they may have 0. Go back to A.J. Terrell against Josh Reynolds. Lions didn't even go at A.J. Terrell in that game. Josh Reynolds had no production after coming off a big productive week because the matchup wasn't there for him. So we just went away from it. And you have to be able to win different ways. And I think if anything, that Baltimore game makes the Lions stand back and say, wait a minute, we weren't able to win this way. You need to add someone that could do that. Plus, he's just got reliable hands in general. The physicality, the contested catchability. You talk about the flexibility as a pass catcher, outside of his frame, all of those things. He does have some long speed. He's a ridiculous leaper, 44.5-inch vertical, runs a 4.48, so he can get vertical, win some of those back shoulders, which, notice, we have not thrown since week 1. We threw it to Marvin Jones Jr. Last year, we threw it a couple times to Chark. We don't have a guy we could throw those to, so we don't throw those. Now, we'll throw kind of the over-the-shoulder pass where Josh Reynolds can track it, but not the back shoulder fades. We haven't thrown those at all since week 1. We don't have that guy. Now we do. Donovan Peoples Jones. So I'm not going to get caught up in what's his production. He has 8 receptions this year. Couple reasons for that. Number one, they don't have a quarterback. They've been in and out with their quarterback, and they also drafted Cedric Tillman, similar body style out of Tennessee in the 2nd round, tied along with some other receivers that they have like Amari Cooper and David Bell and a lot going on there. But because you have that piece, it made sense that they would move off this player because Cedric Tillman's going to be the future at that position for them anyway. And again, I'll make this one last point for a future look. I don't see the Lions really ever putting big money into an outside receiver. I just don't think it's how this offense is built. And you always have to keep in mind the future. Guys are going to start having to get paid. These draft picks are going to start having to get paid. First up's going to be guys like St. Brown. He's going to get paid a ton of money. Absolutely. And he's going to deserve it, and he's going to be perfect for this offense. But paying big money to an outside receiver, to me, doesn't make sense for this offense because it's not Goff's best skill set. You want to lean into his skill set. They've done that. Now, what I see from Peoples Jones, from what I've watched before, definitely need to watch a lot more. A lot of things that I like within his game that fits what we need to me. Footwork in terms of top of the route. Footwork that he has. See him on speed outs like this. Watch him shorten up his footwork, get out of the break, make a great catch. Also, the ability, and again, the flexibility, the leaping ability tied along with the flexibility to catch things outside of his frame, outside of his body. Super reliable hands. 0 drops this season. A year ago had over 800 yards. And in the context, DJ Chark had 500 yards last season. He was still very valuable to us. Why? Because he had a specific role. He was a vertical threat, which is what Jameson Williams is now. And with 500 yards, the guy got paid like, what, $10 million or something? Like, the guy got legitimately paid. There was a role for him. Lions didn't have a guy to fill this role really once Marvin Jones Jr. left. It was a missing piece to this receiving core that they absolutely needed. So I love his flexibility, the ability to find zone holes, sit down. If you go back to training camp, we had Denzel Mims. Where was he eating? Zone holes, dig routes, middle of the field, taking the big hit. It's exactly what this guy puts on a film.
Some of that route savvy, specifically you'll see it against zone coverage, but here cornerback goes into half turn. He's bailing out on this play, and you can see how Donovan Peoples Jones with the pacing kind of lifts up, starts to really slow play this route. That way the cornerback can't drive down and bite on this. Then when he breaks the middle of the field, he's able to create that separation.
Also love his pacing in terms of, again, the top of the route, setting up off coverage corners, the way he slow plays it to get in, get out, create separation, not allow them to bite and dive down on the route.
Didn't seem super dynamic in terms of the catch and run transition ability for a whole bunch of yards after the catch, but I will say, though this isn't the clip, I love the savvy in terms of you'll see the head fake usage. We just watched him slow play a route. Things like that, you'll see him really sell the routes with pacing when he's able to just simply push vertically.
Now, I don't think he's the consistent separate a ton against outside corners, against man coverage. I don't think he's that. He's going to be more in contested situations unless it's zone coverage. However, if you can beat off coverage or half turn from an outside alignment, push vertical, get back to the ball, comeback routes, curl routes, those kind of things, that's really the key. Not running the super complex routes, getting a ton of separation, that's not going to be his role. I don't think that's what we're going to ask him to do here. It'll be more of like the dig routes. It'll be more of the comeback routes or the out routes or, the big deep curl routes, those kind of things, or it'll be zone holes over the middle of the field, which fits him perfectly because he's played as a big slot, and that fits him perfectly. 80 snaps so far this year has come in the slot for him. We play a lot of condensed splits. Again, between the numbers, it makes sense for our quarterback strengths, and and he can play that role as well. Plus, he can block. Oh, it's not like super fancy to talk about. The guy can block, and all of our receivers have had to block. Watch Jameson Williams blocking on some of the plays this past week. Now, he missed the block on the toss, but he also put a really good block to extend a St. Brown first down. Our receivers got to block. They got to set up pin pull opportunities. The reliability as a pass catcher, and he does have some of that vertical speed to at least be threatening over top.
Here working against an off-cover corner as well, and you see how he's able to kind of extend that stride, really push vertically. That allows him to open up and then sit down, work back to the ball. I think he's a little bit stiff in some sense.
Now, some of my knocks, again, consistently winning off the line of scrimmage in terms of getting separation. I don't think he has a ton of twitch at the line of scrimmage. Some of this, the quick sudden movements. I don't see that. I think it plays a little bit more into physicality there. Though, give him credit, I think he's actually improved since Michigan, where he wasn't extremely productive, but he was a touchdown machine. In the NFL, he's only had 8 career touchdowns, which is something I circle. He could also potentially add that element back. Maybe. He may be able to give some of that to the Lions. I'll have to watch more, but maybe he can give that to us, help us out in some of those red zone spots, at least give us a threat where maybe if we have a one-on-one, we can throw that fade because, again, we don't have a guy to throw that pass to. Look at what we've done in the last few weeks in the red zone. We run Josh Reynolds over the middle of the field behind a linebacker because we don't have guys that we can throw the fade to. Now, this guy may be actually able to play that role. He was doing that big time in college. But, like at Michigan, never had a 100-yard game. I don't think he's going to have 100-yard games here either. He may have some with 0, some with 4, and those will be big games. But that's all we need. This offense isn't about, we need a guy that can give us 50 receptions. We need a guy that can play a specific role when a team says we're taking away middle of the field, or they're taking away this, or they have elite linebackers like Baltimore, and they're very tough to eat over the middle of the field, and you have to give me one key win on the outside. I need a guy that can do that. Peoples Jones' body type allows me to do that. Someone that can stand up to the physicality of some of these corners, play on the ball. A little bit stiff in that sense. He's not as loose as a route runner. He can be a little bit stiff. He can sometimes, get checked working through zone coverage. So again, some of the complex route, probably not necessarily the best skill set for him. Again, I don't think that's what he's going to do. And then some of the speed. I don't think it's like Jameson Williams where it's as threatening. It's a little bit more gradual. It's not like a boom, boom. But he does a pretty nice job of, I think, setting up some of his routes and on top of that, using some route savvy. Beautiful fit for the Lions. I don't have any problems with this at all. The competition was fine. The Lions gave up a really low amount. 2025, they have an extra 4th round pick because of DeAndre Swift trade. What we gave up isn't crazy. On top of that, we clearly needed this piece because we did not have it at receiver. We just didn't have it. Say whatever you want. We did not have it. And we needed a guy that could at least play that kind of role. He can. He could turn into a future piece for us. And then the last thing that I will say, the biggest thing is I think you can walk away from this deadline saying, man, there's maybe guys that we could have went after that did get moved today. But for the most part, a lot of guys didn't. And I think for a lot of guys, they weren't true upgrades. Some guys that didn't get moved, I thought would have been upgrades. But we didn't make that move, and no one ended up making those moves. So I don't know what the interest was from other teams to even move off certain players. But the reality is, man, I think this is a heck of a move for the Lions. I think this is great. I think this is great. And I'm not trying to sit up here and be like, yo, come back to this video. He's going to have 30 receptions in 5 weeks. Like, no, he's not. He's not. He may have 0 receptions in his first 2 games. I don't know. But there's going to be that one game where we need him to come through because we need that body type, and he makes that big play because he is one of the more reliable pass catchers. And there's one thing you could say we could use on the outside is a reliable pass catcher. Look no further than Donovan Peoples Jones. I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to try to keep this short and sweet so I can get it out to you guys. But Donovan Peoples Jones, welcome back to Michigan. Welcome to the Lions. Thank you, Prop, for watching, and I'm out.